Hey, what's up guys? Today I'm going to finally do a wrap up, and that'll be my fall wrap up, my September, my October, and my November wrap up. I've been really slacking with wrap ups and I apologize. But yeah, this might be a little bit longer than usual for wrap up, but I'll try to go quickly. The first book I read in September was The Beginning of Everything by Robin Schneider, which is about this boy named Ezra who lived a very popular lifestyle in high school, and he gets in a car accident that shatters his leg and he's no longer able to do the things he used to, and he ends up falling in love with a girl, the new girl, who has a lot of weird things going on with her. So this book was not as good as Extraordinary Means by Robin Schneider, which is one of my favorites. But I gave this 3.25 stars. The second book I read in September was Sky in the Deep by Adrienne Young. This is a Vikings-inspired fantasy, historical fiction fantasy type book where, what is her name? Elin is fighting in battle, and she sees her brother who she had watched die years ago. So she's dealing with the betrayal of her brother actually being alive and him fighting on the other side. So I gave this 4.5 stars. It was really good, really beautiful, really wonderfully written, and I can't wait for the companion novel, which is about a different character. All the characters are so amazing. The romance was beautiful, so I highly recommend this. The third book I read in September was The Knife of Never Letting Go by Patrick Ness. This book trilogy is being turned into a movie starring Tom Holland, who plays Spider-Man in the Avengers movies, who I entirely love, Marvelous books. And this I ended up giving, what did I give it? 4.75 stars. Basically, this is a dystopian science fiction where all in the town where Todd, a 13 or 14, I can't remember, year old boy lives, you can hear all the thoughts of all the people in the town, and they're all men. And then one day he meets a girl in the forest and he can't hear her noise, which is what they call that. So I really enjoyed this. It's really fun, really action-packed, and I can't wait to read the second and third book. The last book I read in September was The Wicker King by Kay Ancrum. This book is about two friends, August and Jack, who are kind of going crazy together, and Jack is definitely a golden boy, and all of a sudden he starts having these hallucinations of mythical creatures all around him, kind of, and August and Jack kind of work through that together and almost create their own kingdom, which it was really interesting, but I didn't really like it. It's my least favorite book of the month, and I gave it 3 stars. Then, October, I read Layer of Dreams by Libba Bray, which I gave 4.5 stars. I really love the Diviners series. It's so good. Libba Bray is such an amazing author, and the audiobooks are amazing, which is how I've read both the first and the second book now, and I just really loved it. The Diviners series, if you don't know, is about these group of people in the 1920s that have some weird powers, and they're called diviners. So it's like historical fiction with some magical realism, supernatural type stuff, and it's really good. Then the second book I read in October was Undead Girl Gang. I dropped it. Undead Girl Gang by Lily Anderson, which I gave 3.75 stars. I thought I would enjoy it a lot more than I actually did. It's about Mila and her best friend and 2 other girls have recently killed themselves, and she doesn't believe that that's what actually happened, so she uses a dark magic Wiccan spell to bring her best friend back, but accidentally brings the other 2 as well, and they are trying to figure out what happened to them, and these girls don't remember anything except for a week before they died. So it was good, but wasn't my favorite. I didn't really like the characters or the dynamic between the characters, but I thought the ending and the twist or whatever was really interesting. Next, I read The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood, which I gave 4 stars. I really enjoyed this book. I think it really deals with like rape culture, feminism. Baxter? Rape culture, feminism. It's like a dystopian where many women are infertile, so the ones who are fertile have to work as handmaids. They are used to get, the males get them pregnant, and they have to give their baby to the wife of the house, and it's very interesting. And they just released it, or just announced that Margaret Atwood will be writing a second book to the series due to the popularity of the Hulu TV series based on this first book. And the first book definitely ends in like a weird cliffhanger, so I'm really excited that there's going to be a second book, because I really did not like how it ended, because I needed more. Next, I read Sadie by Courtney Summers, which I gave 5 stars. A very beautiful book. The audiobook is amazing. I highly recommend it. It is about Sadie, who runs away from her family, from the trailer park she lives in, to get revenge on the person who she believes murdered her little sister. So it is in dual perspective of her, Sadie, as she's trying to figure out how to find this person, and then the other perspective is a man who is doing a podcast on their whole story. And the podcast was amazing. It sounded like a real podcast. The voice actors were amazing. Like, I'm pretty sure it was a full cast narration if I remember correctly. And it was just so good and so beautiful. Definitely trigger warning for like sexual assault, murder, child molestation. It's very heartbreaking, but it definitely was very important and very great read, and I love Courtney Summers. Now I need to read all of her other books. The last book I read in October was Anya's Ghost by Vera Rosegall. This is a really adorable graphic novel about Anya, who is in a family of Russian immigrants, and she doesn't really connect with anyone at school. And she ends up falling down a hole and making friends with a ghost whose bones are also in the hole. And she's trying to figure out what happened to her and get revenge. And they're friends, the ghost, and then some things start to go bad. The author was actually was it a screenwriter? She did the storyboards or something like that for the movie Coraline, which definitely like reflects itself in this book, and I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4.5 stars. November! The first book I read in November was Warriors Don't Cry by Melba Pattillo Beals, which I gave 3.5 stars. This is Melba Pattillo's recollection of her experience as one of the Little Rock Nine, I think it was the first group of African American students to integrate into a white high school in Arkansas. So I really enjoyed this book for like the content and how I got to get a closer look into what happened to these 9 students, but I didn't think it was written very well, and I didn't think the characters were very well developed, and I just didn't quite enjoy it as much as I wanted to. Next book I read was, if I can find it, was If We Were Villains by ML Rio, which I gave 4.25 stars. This book is starts with Oliver getting out of prison after 10 years, and you start figuring out why as he's talking to the ex-detective that had put him in jail in the first place and telling him the real story. And it's very interesting. It's very the kids in it and Oliver are thespians. They go to an art school for theater, And there's a lot of Shakespeare references and a lot of Shakespeare plays and a lot of just musical, or not musicals, just plays in general. So I think if you are interested in theater or Shakespeare, this would be really good for you. I'm not super interested in that, but I really enjoyed the plot, and I think the ending was really cool, but also very odd. Then the third book I read in November was The Raven King by Maggie Stiefvater, which is the last book in the Raven Boys series, which is about these group of boys and one girl who are trying to find the tomb of a dead Welsh king, and it's absolutely beautiful. I gave this 5 stars. I loved the way this ended. I can't wait for the spin-off series, including Ronan, who is one of my favorite characters, and I just thought it was really well done, and I highly recommend this series. Just know that it is very character-based and the plot is very slow, so if you cannot handle character-based books, it is probably not for you. This, by the way, was my 75th book of the year, which was my goal, so I'm really happy about that, and now I'm over the goal, past the goal. The next book I read in November was The Sun and Her Flowers by Rupi Kaur, which I gave 3.5 stars. I'm not a huge fan of Rupi Kaur's poetry. I own Milk and Honey. I read it. I can't remember what I rated it, but one of the Amazon Prime free Kindle books was The Sun and Her Flowers, and I really just wanted something quick and like poetry type thing, so I read that. I'm not a huge fan of the topics Rupi Kaur writes about because I haven't experienced a lot of them, but I do think they're very important, so I just don't relate to it as much, but I still enjoyed it. And then the last book that I read in November, the last book I finished, was A Very Large Expanse of Sea by Tahira Mafi. This is based on Tahira Mafi's own experiences as a Muslim teenager after the attacks of 9/11 in the United States on the Twin Towers and the Pentagon. My voice is giving out. I'm really sorry. And this fellow Shireen, and she meets a boy named Ocean and their adventures and what they have to deal with for prejudice, as she's Muslim and wears a hijab, and he is the white popular basketball player. And it's really amazing. I really love the family dynamic, especially with with Shireen's older brother Naveed, and I also really enjoyed their hobbies, which were breakdancing, and they had like a breakdancing tournament, like they would go to like breakdancing outings, things, and that was really cool because I don't know much about breakdancing, but I also know Tahira Mafi actually breakdances in real life, and a lot of these things, the things in this book and the prejudice and the racist things that happened to Shireen happened to Tahira, which is really disappointing, but I think it was very important for me to read as I am not Muslim and don't have that perspective, and I really thought it was very important. I hope you enjoyed my fall wrap-up where I didn't actually read as much as I could have. Sad. But thank you guys so much for watching. I will definitely have a new video soon. When I get my book out order, I will do an unboxing of that. But for now, goodbye!